What is going on, everybody, and welcome to another video. You're in my workshop again, and we're going to have a little discussion about my own personal journey into buying tactical style knives, into buying gentleman folders, and everything in between, what I classified as hybrids. And there's a lot of industry buzzwords such as dress tactical, or whatever. Anyways, it's again early in the morning for me. I would love to have a drink while I'm discussing this, but you can't be drinking at 7 in the morning and not be considered an alcoholic. So let's get on with this. On the table, I have 3 knives here, and for the most part, these 3 knives could be put into a specific category. Let me back the camera out just a tiny bit here. So on the left here, we got what I would consider, and what probably most of everybody would consider, a full tactical knife. This is the Fox Knives Cole Moskine Delta Spec Ops folder. That's a really big long mouthful, so try saying that 3 times fast. On a whole, for me, tactical knives have always been like large and feature like really thick materials, thick blade stock, and just aggressive looking. This is kind of a spear point, partially serrated. I mean, this is it's got all the hallmark signs of being a tactical folder, much less having a 4 1/4 inch blade, which for a normal EDC would be a little bit of an overkill. So in the middle here, well, actually, let's get back to that. On the far right, I have what most people would consider a gentleman's folder. Always slightly smaller, even like under the sub 3 inch length, between 3 and 3 and 3 1/4 possibly, maybe 3 1/4, getting a little bit too large for a gentleman's folder. But usually the materials are a little bit more refined, more elegant looking, and on a whole just less scary. So I mean, like, if you can imagine going into an office and you're about to slice an apple or something, you pull this out versus pulling this out, it's gonna make a huge impact on other people around you. Now, in the middle, we have what I call a hybrid, which is what the industry and community and knife owners alike would call a kind of more of a dress tactical. Now, dress tactical knives can come in all sizes. You can have everything in from this gigantic, large HB01 by Fantoni to something slightly more discreet and smaller, which I can't find on the table right now. That would classify it as a hybrid in my mind. So this video, I guess, will be more a ramble video about my progression from buying knives like this to buying knives like this, and my reasoning behind it and everything. So let's begin. So first off, I love tactical knives, and I've always asked myself, is a tactical practical? And so when it comes to knife size, you guys already know what my preferred style is. It's usually going to be between 3.25 and 3.5. So to give you a quick idea, this is a Curtis F3. This is about a 3.25 inch blade length. You're going to be setting the handle between like 7 and 7 1/4 possibly. Overall. I mean, not the handle, but overall. And then you have I believe this is going to be about 3, if not just under 3 inches of blade length. And when it comes to this size, this can be a little bit too small for my preferred EDC carry. Now, when you get into the 4 inch or larger, this is going to be completely too large for my preferred method of carry. So when it comes to tactical knives, while they're kind of nice, and when I first started buying knives, I was like, oh wow, yeah, I gotta have a tactical knife. I gotta have the nice ergos, and I gotta have the good grip on it. What if I go batoning or whatever? After almost a decade of collecting knives, I have never once batoned with my knife. Even for fun, for that matter. I just don't have a use for it. I work in an office. I'm not a soldier. It's not the apocalypse yet, and I don't work out of a war zone. There's no need for me to have something like this. All right, we're going to take this off the table for a little bit. Now, I'm going to take the Fantoni off the table, and we're going to bring in like more average EDC knives. For example, your Rick Hinder XM18s. This could be considered a tactical knife. But for the most part, is it practical for EDC? And in many ways it is, because let's face it, a knife is designed to do mainly one thing. It's designed to cut into things. It's designed to stab into things. So for the most part, most knives can be overlapping and used in most applications. Now, with that being said, would you consider certain knives and certain blade shapes, more more geared towards specific tasks? Certainly. For example, you got your Para 2, which is perfect for doing fine slicing into, like, say, food, cardboard. I mean, if you need a slicer, this is it right here. You need something a little bit more beefy that does more. You're going to want something a little thicker, a little bit beefier, like the XM18. And then you go on to your hybrid blade styles, where you have, for example, drop point, recurve, so on and so forth, and Warncliffe, sheep's foot, so on and so forth, right? So you definitely want to pick the right blade shape for your daily uses, or you just want to pick a very generic blade shape that just has like a really usable average blade shape, like just a normal drop point. All right. So, but that's going to be another discussion. Today we're just talking about tactical to gentleman's folder. So I was buying up all these knives, and I was talking about how I like the grips, how I like tactical looking, and while it was fun for a little while, and I love these kind of style of knives, discounting this one on the corner here. I'm getting a little tired of having tactical knives, just because there's really no use for them. And for the most part, unless I'm really getting into like more and more custom knives, most of the tactical knives look all the same to me. I mean, and don't hate me for saying that, but literally they do. They're gonna have like wild finger choils. They're gonna have like thumb ramps galore. They're just like all over the place, and they look really like insanely scary. So, like for example, the SOG right here, if I was to pull this out in the office to slice something with, I'm sure I'm going to be asked about it, and I'm sure I'm going to be fired on the spot. But again, if I was to pull something like this out of my pockets, I'm sure it's going to be a little bit okay. Now, I can't be using something this small. This is nice for a keychain and all that, and I don't know if I would consider this a gentleman's folder. This is more like a utility knife, really. You take it out, you have to open a package or whatnot. When I talk about gentleman knives, I'm talking about something that's actually, you can probably get about 4-finger grip on it, you know what I mean? And so that has some, maybe not like really extremely ornate materials, but just something just more beautiful than your average, tactical style knives. Now, when I say tactical, sometimes I think it's more like an industry buzzword where they you could have a knife that's just perfectly normal. It could just have like G10 scales. It looks fine, and the market tacks on the word tactical, and all of a sudden, oh yeah, it can be used in tactical applications. Well, sure. I mean, I get that. You can probably pretty much use almost any knife in a quote-unquote tactical situation, but there are certain knives that are better for it than other ones. So handle material also makes a huge difference for me. And then of course, if you're going to like talk about tactical situations, you probably want a handle that provides more grip. For example, these nice grippy G10s. You probably don't want anything that's too smooth, because you can't hold on to it. And that leads me into the whole discussion about dress tactical, which is kind of a weird, I don't know, it's kind of a weird term for me when I talk about that or think about it, because for me personally, I would think that you'd want to separate those two terms in terms of tactical and gentleman's folder. You got all these hybrid terms, and I don't know, it doesn't make any sense when you have something that you deem as tactical, but then you put the word dress in front of it, meaning that it could be used in a tactical application, but it's completely like really, ornate and done up. For example, the Smarter Young Hunter. Now, if I was to replace and strip down these scales and replace it with like a nice grippy G10, maybe a frame lock on the side, any of those kind of considered tacticalness of knives, features of knives, could this be considered a tactical knife? Well, certainly, because I mean, it's large, it's thick, it has very good handle ergonomics, and if you replace this with like more grippy material, it's going to hold into your hands. It's got a nice thumb ramp, it's perfect. But because it has all these ornate materials on it, it's not going to be considered full tactical. It's going to be considered like a full dress or dress tactical, in my opinion. Does it make it any less of a knife? Not really, because again, what really counts is the blade, because it still pretty much cuts. You know, it'll cut into anything. It'll do what you need to do, almost regardless of what the handle is going to look like or what the rest of the knife is going to look like. A knife is just meant to be used as a cutting tool, right? But at the same time, obviously, this knife is way too large to be considered a gentleman's carry. I mean, we've got a 3.75 inch blade, so it's quite large. In fact, if you want to look at it next to the Delta Op spec folder, it's quite huge. So I got medium-sized hands, if that tells you guys anything. Okay, so moving on. So then what has happened now is that I've been moving away from knives that look like this into more knives that look like this. For me personally, I love a good wood handle. It's just, it feels so nice. It gives me, I'm not going to say like old-timey feeling, but it leads into more of classicalness for me. And that's, of course, this is purely just my own feeling and my own opinion about it. And I'm moving away from much larger knives. I used to love knives that are like 3.5 inch and beyond. You know, 4 was getting a little too large, but like around a 3.75, 3.5 to 3.75. Like for example, the XM18 is 3.5 inch blade to the 3.75, and you know, cutting close to the 4 inch blade mark. You know, those are the kind of knives I like on a general whole. But as I progress in my knife collecting, I'm really getting into slightly smaller knives, you know, in like the more 3.3, 3.25 inch range, you know, and not as tall and thick as what you see on this Kershaw Knockout, but more like thinner, you know, more streamlined knives. And handle materials, I'm definitely getting away from like aluminum. I'm getting away from G10, or actually this isn't even G10. This is like GFN, or red glass filled nylon, and getting away from G10. While I really like the looks, let's get some of these off the table. Well, I really like the looks of, say, like Mokutai and more of the exotic materials. Number one, the price doesn't really justify it in certain cases. And what I've noticed from me personally is that the more expensive the knife is, I tend not to use them as much. And it's funny because you got this price that's like way up here, that's extremely expensive, and you think like, oh wow, I should probably use it because I paid so much for it. But at the same time, it's so beautiful that I don't want to use it, so to speak, you know? So I find myself just shying away from this. So for me, I need to get somewhere in the middle ground. And when I say middle ground, I mean not like this, definitely not like this, and definitely not like this. Very expensive knives, and I find myself cutting very little with it. But when I go buy a knife like these two here, I use the crap out of them just because, you know, they're just knives, and they're just you know, for general use, they look great, and you know, and they don't break the bank. Now, does the price of a knife and the looks of a knife actually affect functionality? Probably not. You know, if I was to just, if someone just hand me this knife and I know nothing about knives, and I didn't know what kind of work went into them, and the price, obviously, would I use this on a daily basis? Sure, I'd probably carry this. I mean, it's a little heavy, but I'd probably carry something like this, or even carry something like this, and I think, oh wow, this is a very beautiful knife, and I'd probably just use it if I didn't know anything about damascene steel, mother of pearl, all that kind of stuff, and of course the price tag on this thing. Yeah, why not? But because I do have the knowledge of that, and you know, at the same time, I can't help myself being more reserved with more expensive knives. But yet at the same time, I just love dressed up gentleman knives, right? So in my progression to collect and to, you know, move away from the collecting aspect of it and getting more into the, you know, stuff that I'll actually use and get my money's worth out of it, it would be this. You know, it would be knives like the Fox Knives Terzola. And of course the Mcusta bamboo over here on the right. So I don't know. It's just kind of a fine line that I'm walking here now when I get into these kind of different types of styles and whatnot. And I think a lot of it has to do with the community and the industry putting buzzwords on certain knives and putting certain marketing tactics into it, if you will, and trying to obviously target a specific audience on certain specific knives, you know. So now, with that being said, if I was an actual soldier, would I carry, you know, something different? I would probably say so. You know, I can't really say that because I've never been a soldier. So I'm just your regular average Joe, and I'm not going to have a need for something extremely wild and tactical. I like to be more refined, and I like to carry stuff more like this now. So I think that's a very important point to keep if any of you guys are kind of getting away and moving away from, you know, more tactical knives, and wanting to get into something more refined. These are all cut. They all have a good purpose to them. And, you know, for the most part, if you buy knives, you use them. I'm kind of kicking myself for not using any more of my knives, and which is the reason why a couple years ago I sold off a huge chunk of my collection, and I started replacing them with knives I'll actually use. Sure, I have a few knives here and there that I just kind of like to look at, and, you know, for the most part, I don't really cut with them or do too much in terms of carrying them, because, like, for example, this George Muller here. I've never carried this. I've used it to cut a few things here and there, just to you know, get some use out of it. But then the blade gets wiped down, it gets babied just because of the way it looks and just for the price tag. Is that natural? Sure. You know, if I bought myself a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, I would keep the thing really, really nice and not want to, you know, beat it up too much on the road. But at the same time, it is a pure driving machine, and you're supposed to beat it up and use it on the road. I mean, that's the whole point of it, you know. If you get like a similar machine than a Ferrari, let's say Ferrari made a car that completely looks normal, and it's just like wrapped up in, you know, a normal average you know, steel, or I mean, sorry, steel, like an aluminum body, and it doesn't look all wild and stuff, and you didn't know it had a Ferrari engine in it, would you beat it up? You probably would, because you wouldn't know anything about it. But if you see the looks of a Ferrari, and you know what it is, you know the heritage, you know, you probably want to be a little bit more careful while you're driving on the road, you know, and it kind of lends into the same thing as these knives is. You know, you buy something really expensive and you buy something that looks really nice, and do you want to like go out and beat the crap out of it? Probably not, because of the way it looks. But does it affect the functionality? No, absolutely not. This knife will probably perform just as well as this knife will in the same applications. It will just cut, and it will be able to stab into things, and, you know, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, you know, you may scratch up the blade, you may scratch up the handles, you know, but in the end, if you strip away all the beautiful looks of it, it's just a knife, really. So, okay, anyways, I think I'm rambling on a little bit too much here now. I think in short, knives have the meaning of knives, of tactical versus gentlemen's, have totally changed for me. I think going forward, you're probably gonna see a lot less of these kind of knives here. Maybe even a lot less of like dress tactical, as they call it, you know, and probably just more traditional, smaller, office-friendly gentleman's carry. Because let's face it, I don't have a belt strong enough to keep my pants up when I start carrying larger knives like these. There's no point to it for me. You know, I whip this thing out and I start cutting into, like, say, an apple or something. This is overkill. I mean, really. At the same time, do I like the way these knives look? Sure, I do. And I am oddly attracted to certain tactical-looking knives, but practically, you know, there's no practical uses for them for me. I just like these more refined looks. So going forward, that's what's basically what I'm gonna be looking for: smaller, more gentlemanly, maybe old-timey, more refined. You know, just more classically looking knives. So anyways, go ahead and leave me a comment down below and let me know what you think in terms of practical versus gentleman's folders, and then versus the hybrids, the dress tacticals, you know, the gentleman tacticals, you know, whatever. When I start mixing those two words together, what does it really mean to you? I mean, this is one reviewer's opinion and one knife collector's opinion and one knife user's opinion only, and I would love to hear back from you guys. So anyways, take care, have a nice day, and I'll catch you guys all in the next video.